Welcome. This video will walk you through how to import data into the SBC system using the program called convert.uni. I'm going to start by going to my file that I'm going to import. So I'm going to minimize SBC, go to my desktop, and I'm going to open the file I'm going to work with. So I'm working with an AC Delco pricing file. You can work with any kind of file that you want, and the information that you have that you want to import can really go into just about anywhere in SBC. This is a price update. This is going to be typically what people use the import program for. So before I import into SBC, I want to clean up my file. I use Excel. You can use any program that you'd like to use, but you want to save the file 99% of the time as a .csv or a .text file. Those are the two files that are most easily imported into SBC. So I'm going to start by my prices. You'll notice that my price here on this core is 16. It represents $16. However, if I were to import it into SBC right now, I would import 16 cents. So what I want to do is I want to highlight all of my fields. I'm going to right-click and format cells to number. This adds 2 decimal places but does not add a comma, which I don't want to add commas if I can help it. And I'm going to click the OK button, and then you'll notice that all of my prices have 2 characters after the decimal point. That is important. The other thing that I want to look for is commas and things like my description. Now, I left this here on purpose. I can edit this field. I can do a copy, replace, or a find replace my commas with a semicolon. I can do it with a space. I can remove them completely, or I can leave them in here and then save the file as a text file instead. A text file is going to separate each of my columns by a tab keystroke, so it doesn't matter if I have commas in there. A CSV file is specifically designed to find a comma and use that as the separator between your columns. So if I was to leave this here and then save the file as a CSV file, my prices would be off. So I want to make sure that I look for, find, and deal with, in whichever way I want, commas in my data. The last thing that you want to do is, if your file was sent by your vendor and it's got pictures, it's got weird headings, it's got a whole description of information, you want to clean up your file as much as possible. You can leave columns of information in Excel that you don't plan on importing into SBC. However, you do want to clean it up as much as possible, pulling out any pictures and making sure that characters in your data that are like trademark signs or things like those are removed. So once I've cleaned up my file and determined which type of file I'm going to save it as, I'm going to do a save as in Excel, file, save as. Now I want my file name to be a short file name, so Delco works just fine. And I'm going to save it as a .text file. So here's my text. I click the save button. Yes, and then I'm going to close this. Okay, so here is the file that I just created. Now, I like to, most of the time, save the data as Excel as well, so that if I have to go back to the file, I don't have to start my conversion over, but you can do this any way that you want to. So once I've completed dealing with my file in Excel, or in whichever program I'm going to use, I'm going to move it to the user data folder in SBC. I happen to have a shortcut on my desktop to user data, and I'm going to so I'm going to show these here. So user data exists as a file on your server machine. Some people don't have access to the server. If you are the person who is importing data into the system on a regular basis, you may want to add a copy of the user data folder, add a shortcut to the user data folder onto your machine so that you can get there very easily. You can always throw the information onto a flash drive and walk over to your server and drop it off as well. One note to this, do not let anyone go into user data and start cleaning up what's in there, because the information in there is your actual data in your system. So we don't want people to on a Friday, it's late in the afternoon, I'm going to go and start cleaning up the system and deleting large files to clean up the space on my system, and all of a sudden you go into your system and you have no inventory. So make sure that if you have this user data folder on your drive somewhere, on your machine somewhere, that you either keep it secured or that you make sure that people aren't in there messing around with it. So I'm going to grab my Delco file and I'm going to drop it up into my user data folder. I could also have done a copy and a paste. Now, in a lot of cases, especially if you're the person who does the price updates, your files are called the same thing every month. That's totally fine, as long as you know what the file was that was in user data to begin with. I'm going to replace my file, and it's going to drop that new file off and replace the old one. Once I'm done adjusting everything that's going on in the file and moving it into my user data folder, I can close both of these folders and I'm done with this portion of the setup. And now I'm going to go back into SBC. Okay, the program that we're using to import data is called convert.uni. And as I mentioned, you can use convert.uni to import data into your manufacturer file, your supplier file, your AR, your inventory, your part tracking. No. Excuse me, not your part tracking, your price matrices. You can import data into a lot of different places in SBC. So this is just a basic how to use the screens, and if you want some more additional assistance, please call SBC and ask us for some help. I'm going to go to System Utilities, that's my Y menu, and then I'm going to go to D as in David. That is my Data Import Export Utilities. And then I'm going to use the second column down, or the second choice down, which is my Universal Import tool. Okay, it's going to ask me who I am. This is important. You as an administrator can set up the security so that certain people don't have access to these tables or can't save anything in here. So you'll want to set up security if you're interested in that. Okay. You could have a saved screen with library jobs in here if this is something that you do on a regular basis. I'm starting from scratch, so my screen looks like this here, but I'll save the job that we eventually create to show you how to access that in the future. So my file name, what's the name of the file that I just saved? If you recall, the file is delco.txt. I'm going to hit my Enter key. Whoops, I'm going to hit my Enter key. And notice my file shows up at the bottom of my screen. So the next column is asking me what is separating my fields. And if I click on the drop-down menu, User Defined allows me to determine what type of character is separating each of my fields. If you want assistance with this, please call SBC. Text is what I currently have, so if I was to choose text, it's going to import that into that file type field. Comma separated is my CSV file that allows me to separate, that allows me to use a file that's separated by commas. Pipe is the straight up and down character that is right above your Enter key. That's what a pipe is. So you can use that as a field separator if you would like to. Some imports from other systems use the pipe. And then tab delimited. Actually, I'm going to use this one. So this is telling me that I'm using, that I'm being separated by tabs, which is what I have on my screen. So I'm going to click on tab delimited. And then file header length. So I left my header on the screen intentionally to show you how this works. If you have a header on your document, and you can see it in that bottom box right there. What you want to do is go to the L as in Lima in the CL, which stands for Carriage Return Line Feed, which is basically when you hit your Enter key in on Word, or when you go to the next row of information in Excel. So I'm going to click on that L, and you'll notice that down here in the bottom it says the current byte is 59, which means that there were 59 bytes of information that determined how long my header was. So I'm going to type that number here, and then that information is not going to be imported into my system. Most of the time, if you leave the header and you import it, all you're going to end up with is a part number whose manufacturer is MFG and whose part number is whatever you called the part number field. It's not necessarily going to hurt anything, but there are times when it's really unnecessary for you to import that data into the system, and perhaps your import will fail if you do that. So I always delete the information in Excel before I import the data into SBC, but that's just there just as a, if you leave your header there, you can define how long your header is. Now notice that my delimiters in the bottom are grayed out. The reason they're grayed out is because I told the system that I was using a tab delimited import, and so the field for my tab delimited is a 09. If you look over on the right, you can see that's a 09. And then my record 0D0A, that's just code for what determines the end of my row and the end of my information. So this is not information that you need to memorize. It's not information that you need to know, but that's what that is there for. In the case that you need help, there's always the yellow help button in the lower right corner, and it's going to give me information depending on which field that I'm sitting on. So I'm going to click my any key to get back off, and then I'm going to click on the home to return button, and that'll take me back to my main screen. Now let's go top down real quick. Report options at the top. Is this something that I want to run through the scheduler? Do I want to run it in the background? Number one, is this going to take a long time and I don't want to sit here and watch it happen on my screen? That would be a reason you want to run it in the background. Or if you want this to run, perhaps I'm preparing the information right now, but I want it to run in the morning on the first day of the following month. Maybe that would be another reason that I would send it to the background so that I could schedule it to run at a later time. I'm going to press my home key and go to my next one, print options. There's really no reason why you would want to print this file, especially since you already have it in Notepad or Excel or however it came over from your vendor or whoever sent it to you. If you want to print it out, you absolutely can, but you don't need to. The log file down here is a file that is being written to your user data folder again, and that is just entering information as to whether this is a successful import or whether you have problems. We always have this defaulted to run. It's going to default to a file name called CVT and then your task number. So if you are importing data from task 212, it's going to be CVT212.log. And if you have problems with your file, you can go here and it will give you more information as to what happened to fail. If you're calling SBC for assistance, this would be a good file to have on hand so that we can determine what happened when you imported your information. Do I want to update it, yes or no? Do I want to append to it, meaning do I want to just add the information to the bottom of my log file instead of overwriting the previous log file that I used when I did my previous import? So those decisions are up to you. I'm going to click on Home to return. The input source file is where I started, so that's where my system automatically starts me at. And I didn't explain the bottom here. So you'll notice over here there's a legend. So a T between each of these fields is telling me that there's a tab that's separating all of these. If I have a comma delimited file, these fields are not lit up with any color, so just be aware of that. You can scroll all through this file to make sure that your data looks correct. And if you look between the tabs in my particular file, I'm looking, when I'm reviewing this, for anything that looks funky. An @ sign, a weird trademark sign, weird characters, lowercase J letters, those tend to mean that there might be a problem with my file. So that's one way that you can look immediately in the system to see exactly what your file is going to give you. I'm going to press the home key to return. The next box is required. If you try to go to the detail fields, it's going to tell me that my output file isn't set up yet. So I'm going to go to the output files, that's the fourth box down, and this is telling me where I'm putting my information. So for my particular situation, I'm putting it into inventory. I'm going to hit my enter key. Delete existing file. Please don't ever choose yes. This happens to be here for other items when we're wiping away an entire file, which occasionally will happen if we're trying to do some maintenance or if you're adding a new store to your system or something like that. So it does have a purpose, but if you're doing price updating, always leave that to no. We try to do what we can to make sure that you don't accidentally change this to a yes. So if you did, it will give you a big message that says you're about to delete your whole inventory. Please make the decision of whether you want to do this before you move forward. So I'm going to say no, I don't want to continue. Replace, update, or skip if record is found. So if I want to replace the entire inventory the entire inventory record for a certain part number that I'm importing, I'm going to choose the R key. I don't know of anyone who ever uses the R key, so I would say that's an option for you, but I wouldn't suggest it. If you want to just update the information, which remember we're doing a price update, so I'm going to update the existing information, I would choose a U, and that's going to update any parts that it finds in the system. If I want to ignore any parts that I find in the system, I'm going to use the S key. Now, why would I want to ignore the parts that are in my system? The reason you would want to use the skip and I want to ignore everything that already exists is if I want to add new records, add if record is not found. So most of the time people are using this, they're going to determine whether they want to add new records, and then do I want to skip the old records if I find them, or do I want to update the old records if I find them? This answer is completely up to you. So U is to update. That's 90% of what we're doing when we're doing price updates. And then if we're adding new records into the system, where we'd have the yes down here, do I want to skip any that already exist? Maybe I've already used the stuffing program to calculate the pricing on those parts, so I don't want to mess with those. Or I want to update those as well as importing any new fields. And again, the help button is down here in the lower right if you need some assistance. I'm going to press the home key to continue. And now that I've set up my output destination files, I can click on my detail fields. Okay, again, I see my list of stuff down at the bottom. This is the one area where it might be nice to have your headers, because then you don't have to write them down on paper before you import the information. The file column is what file I'm putting the information into. We allow you to put information into more than one file at the same time. I have never done this personally, but you can, which is why it's asking you which file this piece of information goes into. So I'm going to just hit the enter key here, and because the only file that I'm importing into is inventory, it's going to assume that and populate that field for me. Field. What's my first field in my Excel sheet? Now, one thing I didn't mention about Excel is that if you're importing data into the system in any form, you need to import the first couple of columns as the key. What is the key? The key is the identifying information for this record in this file. So when I'm in inventory, the identifying information for my records are my manufacturer and my part number. Your part number could be 100 in 20 different vendors. So we have to make sure that we enter the manufacturer and the part number. Those are unique, and that's what makes them the key of this file. So I'm going to type in MFG. My convert table allows me to do different work in the Excel sheet. These are pre-saved instructions, and you will know when you are to use this convert table column. If you want some more assistance with that, please call over to SBC. On the right, what am I putting into my manufacturer field? Now, you have a help button down here that allows you to walk through a number of different options of information that you can import into these fields. Since this is kind of just a basic how to use this, I'm not going to go into those right now. But you can view them at any time that you want in that help screen. So in this field, I'm going to tell it which column of information off of my Excel sheet or my text document that held my manufacturer information. And the way that we put that in is we type in FLD space 1. That means my column number 1 contains my manufacturer. I'm going to press my enter key one more time, and my second column of information was my part number. So my part number field is P/N. I'm going to enter through my convert table and type in field 2 for my part number. Now, every time that my cursor is on one of these columns, the help button will relate to what's going on in that particular column. So I'm going to press the enter key here, and notice that my description is my third column. Let's just pretend I don't remember what my description field letters are. So if I click on the help, it's going to give me a whole list of what my field letter options are, and notice description is DES. So I'm going to hit the home key to get off of here. I'm going to type in DES, field 3 in my list, and so on. So I'm going to keep going. LST is my price. Jobber, JBR, is my jobber price. Core, is my core cell. I'm going to put, now let's just say, so we have some customers out there whose core cell and core cost is the same value. So I'm going to say that my core column here is both my sell price and my cost. So I'm going to go to the next field, and I'm going to put CCS, which happens to be my core cell field. And I'm going to say, when I'm importing the data, look into that column number 6 for my core cell value and my core cost value. So you can do those kind of things. You can duplicate where columns of information go in your system. My next field is my popularity field, field 7. And then my next is my category field, field 8. Okay, I want to import into my date in system, or my date last price update, or my date last price change, depending on what your fields are designated at or what they are called in the inventory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in DLP, date of last price change. Now, I don't have anything in my Excel field that is going to tell the system what my date of last price is. So this is where I use this help box. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it's very good information, and it's going to tell me how I can import information into the system, like how I can import words. I have to surround my words with quotes. And for a numeric constant or a date, I can either type in a pound sign around each side of the number, or I can, for a system date, I can type in the word date. Now in my case, I'm going to pretend that this file is from a day other than today. So I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to type in my pound sign 2016-1001, meaning that these are new prices as of October 1st, 2016, and I'm going to press my enter key. And what that's going to do is it's going to import the data into my inventory record using that date of last price change. Now, I personally like to do this so that I can find the parts that I imported and confirm that they were correctly updated and so on. But you can import the data in any fashion that you want to. Buttons at the bottom of the screen. Home kicks me back out to the main screen. Prior page and next page allow me to search through my screens that look like this. And keep in mind, I may have columns and columns worth of data, especially if I'm if I'm trying to import a whole new line of information, perhaps from one system to another, and I just have that many fields of information that have been provided to me. F5 to insert allows me to go up into the middle of one of these areas and insert a line of information. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter past your keys, which would be in this case manufacturer and part number, what order that I import these fields into, but for some people they just like to see it in numerical order, so it makes more sense to them. So you can come in here and you can hit the F5 key to insert a space in between one of these lines and then import a new piece of importable information. And F8 does the opposite. Maybe I'm using this as a template. I didn't get the list price from my vendor, so I'm going to click on the F8 key and it's going to delete this line of list information. You're going to want to make sure that your cursor is on the line of information that you want to delete before you delete that. And then my help is over here on the right. On the far right, you have a record layout. So if I forget the layout of my file, or if I have some questions and I want to look at it, when I click on record layout and I hit the F4 key, it's going to take me to a new field, a new record in my Excel sheet every time, so that I can confirm that the data that's in those fields is going to go into the correct location. Notice that this guy, manufacturer part number, but I don't have a POP code and I don't have a category code. One thing to note, if I don't have information, but I am updating this record, it is going to overlay these two fields with a blank. So if I don't want to import these, I want to go back and adjust my inventory, adjust my import, whether I want to use that skip to skip any existing records or whether I want to go back to my Excel sheet and delete some of these. But blanks in your import don't necessarily ignore what's in there. They will overwrite what's in the current field. So you want to make sure that you're doing this correctly. I'm going to press the home key to get off of this field, and then I'm going to press the home key to go back to my main report screen. So I've filled out this whole report screen. Now for me, I like to save this. Number one, so if I screwed up, I can go in and edit it and not have to start over from scratch. Number two, if there's an error, I can actually find where I made the mistake. And number three, because then I can use it as a template in the future. So in the bottom portion of my screen, you'll notice that on the far right, there's an F10 to save the parameters. So I'm going to click on that. This is my Delco import, but I can call it anything I want. I can say this is my price update. I can do anything that I want. I'm going to press the Enter key, and I'm going to type in what this is. Now, if you have a lot of people who are in the import file, put your initials at the end of the title. If they do that, then if someone happens to go through and want to clean up the files that are in there, they won't delete your templates. So I'm going to type my initials. I'm going to press my Enter key. If I have a file in the system and I want to set up some security so people cannot even see my import, I enter a security level that exceeds their employee's security level right here in this field. I have no reason to do that right now, so I'm going to just press my Enter key. The other thing that you can do is enter a password. In that case, the security level isn't stopping them from seeing that this file exists or this import exists, but the password is stopping them from entering this particular area. I'm going to press the Enter key one more time. And so I've saved my job. So just quickly, I'm going to escape out of the import. I'm going to go back in, type in my clerk code, and now here is my import over here on the left. And if you'll go into your YD2 menu, you may see a ton of pre-saved library jobs in here. We've used them for imports when you initially went live, and then you can, perhaps a number of employees in your organization use this file. So you may see a ton of stuff in here, and that's okay. I'm going to go back into my Delco import. Buttons at the bottom, escape, kick me out. Enter will import the data into the system. Print screen will simply print this screen right here if you'd like it for reference. Change printer, I'm not printing anything, so this isn't going to do anything for me. An F5 recall job, there's another video that will walk through what this F5 recall job button actually does. So I want to run this, so I'm going to click on the Enter key. Notice that my screen goes black, and then it starts to list all of the information. And what I want to look for is in this lower left corner, once my import is done, records processed 86, records added to inventory 86, which means that this was a whole new line for me. Records updated 0, so I did not update any records that were already existing in the system. And then the main thing I'm looking for is this message at the bottom, conversion successful. If my conversion is successful, then I don't really need to look at my log. I will always go out and check out a part just to make sure that the parts look correct. But I'm going to say no, I don't want to view my log because I have no need to. It's going to throw me back out to my import menu, and I can either go in and import a new file, or I can escape out. In my case, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to review what I just imported. So D3, put in my clerk code, and I'm going to type in my part number, 109146. Notice that my description is here. My date added to system is here. My date of last price change, which was the number that I wanted to manually enter, is here. My list price, my Java price. I did not have a cost, so nothing was populated there, and there's no core on this particular part, so my cores are 0. I'd probably want to grab a couple of parts in here to check, especially one that has cost and core. The other thing that I populated was my pop code. I'm going to click on my page and go to my utility page. Now notice that my pop code is empty, but it was empty on my Excel sheet for this particular part. So I'm going to scroll around. So I'm going to use my F2 key, and notice that my pop code here is populated with a couple of different things on different parts. So that's good. That was imported. I'm happy with that. Then I can escape back out to my main menu, and I can continue on either importing data into my system or going around along with the rest of my day. If you have any questions, please call SBC 800-829-4722 or email us at sbctraining@autolog.com. It is much easier to fix things before they are imported into the system. So if you have any insecurities or any questions about this, please feel free to call us with any questions before you import, or if you find problems afterwards, you can always call us then as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.